Well, that's getting canceled. But don't worry. If you feel like you're going crazy, you're not going crazy. It's always happened. There's always something hyperbolic making it feel like it. But you're not going crazy because it's all being curated. It's all being manufactured. So the first, and there's going to be 3 or 4 steps to this, but the first thing we're going to talk about are the receipts, the ancestry of influence. I want to go down a couple historical psyops that the United States has. Well, it's clear. It's declassified. We know this is what they do, and a lot of them are famous. The first one we're going to talk about is called the Ghost Armies. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I've never seen it either. No, that sounds really scary. I have seen something similar on Lord of the Rings. Great documentary, by the way. They basically show that there's a whole ghost army that the hobbits had to go and unite. Or not the hobbits, they're the taller people with the swords. There's the guy with the long black hair, the guy with the long white hair with the bow and arrow. And they had to go unite these ghost armies to fight the Slater guy on the horse.
Well, I'm lost.
Well, I mean, let me help try to find you real quick. I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
And in the end, a woman defeated Slater. She knocked him off of his high horse. There has never been a bigger picture of Mother Mary.
I don't know how long ago the Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth stuff has been going on, but Psyops ain't nothing new here in the U.S. I don't know about Middle-earth. But
but it's only a matter of time, though, before all these movies become documentaries. Like, we can actually watch and be like, oh, yeah, that happened. Oh, yeah, that happened. So now what you're about to tell us is that it was all true.
Well, yeah.
The whole Lord of the Rings thing is the saga.
Well, it's a symbology of it for sure. It's an analogy, I guess, like any good fiction. But, these psyops aren't new. The playbook, though, the playbook has changed. And the technology, they have been trying to perfect these psyops for at least 80 years. And that's why we have to go back to the first example of a media use of psyops, because we live in the age of media. But the first use of this is these ghost armies in 1944 France. So we got to take a journey to 1944 France. And we see what's coined as the ghost armies, which is the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. And I'll pull it up just in case people aren't familiar with it.
Is this also known as Ghost Recon?
No. But these were coined the ghost armies, the combat con artists of World War II.
Whoa.
And so basically what they were was they were a bunch of paid actors. There was a bunch of paid artists, and there were a bunch of paid media producers. And what they were tasked to do was create a bunch of fake inflatable tanks, create a bunch of recordings of military arsenal blasting off, and perfect everything so it looked real. So if you're flying over in the sky, it would look like this mass army of tanks. And if you were around, you would hear for miles all the sounds of gunfire and everything. But it was all fake. They were all rubber tanks. It was all just a bunch of fake media. And it worked. It fooled the Nazis. They thought that when they were flying over to do reconnaissance, they saw all this and they reported that the United States is coming in from the south. But really, we were coming in from the north, and so it worked.
Is this this is War History Online. U.S. Ghost Army during World War II gets to get its own movie.
Yeah, look at that. They literally could pick it up because these were rubber inflatable tanks, and they looked real. So imagine if you're flying over on an airplane, you couldn't tell this was fake. Imagine if you saw hundreds of these. You would report back, hey, the U.S. is coming, and they got a big force. So then you would send all your military to the south to try to defend these rubber tanks. And you would hear, as they're moving, all these speakers are blasting all this arsenal sound and military sound. So it sounds like they're moving closer. But really, the military was coming from the north. But it forced the Nazis to go protect the South and left them vulnerable in the north. And so this...
kind of genius.
Yeah, this is a psyop. This was one of these real legitimate operations of media deception. And this was one of the first ones that we really perfected using this media technology, this idea of it. But it doesn't stop there. Now imagine the next psyop we're going to talk about. If they don't just play on illusions of your visual apparatus, but they play on your belief. So the next psyop that we see is in Vietnam. In Vietnam, there's this operation called Operation Wandering Soul. So what they realize is that the Vietnams have this belief system that when you die, if you're not buried in your homeland, your soul just goes wandering in agony forever. So they played on that. And let me pull up this operation. But Operation Wandering Soul, the military's use of psychological warfare in Vietnam. So for those who aren't familiar with it. So what they figured out was that if they could convince that these Vietcongs were wandering around because they died and they weren't buried in their homeland or wherever they're located, they could project a fear to these Vietnamese that you don't want to die. You better give up, because if you die out here, you're going to be just like your friends wandering. So what they did was, just like in the ghost armies, they got a bunch of voice actors and they recorded all these sounds of the Vietnams screaming as though they're wailing in hell and they're in agony and they're saying, give up, go back home, don't die like us. And so they had these speakers on helicopters and they're going through the jungle just blasting all day and night these sounds of these wailing cries of these Vietnam people apparently wailing in hell in agony, saying, don't die like us. So it showed you. Did it work? A little bit. It didn't really work that well. Eventually they realized that, it was helicopters blasting it through. But what it shows you is that the U.S. has no barrier. If they know they can play on your belief, they'll do that too. So, and this is a very primitive thing. Of course, blasting sound from a helicopter, that's primitive. But it shows you if they're willing to do that, they don't care about your culture, your belief, anything. The point is psychological warfare. Mm-hmm. So what do you think they're doing today? But before we get into that, these are things that happen overseas. We're talking about 1944 France. We're talking about 1970 in Vietnam. But what about here in the U.S., which we've talked about many times, Operation Mockingbird? It's the same kind of idea. So in Operation Mockingbird, as we've talked about before, and here's the declassified paper, is the CIA's use of journalists and clergy. So remember, even churches, pastors, they were paid by the CIA to put out certain pieces of information so that they would feed the public certain narratives so that they would believe whatever the CIA psyop was to be. But, and I'm not going to go into it because we've already talked about it a lot, but Operation Mockingbird shows you that these psyops aren't just foreign. They want to curate a narrative also.
On U.S. soil.
Yeah, on you, on me. And they'll even go as far, like we said, with the Vietcongs, they were saying, we know your belief, we're going to play on it. They even hired clergy. So you go to your church and you hear this message. And of course, you're trusting it's your pastor. And so you believe it's a godly thing. It's a biblical thing. But it's a curated message because your pastor's been paid.
So maybe what you're saying is the division between church and state is just an illusion. Well, yeah. That it's secretly always been run by the state.
Well, yeah, that's the beauty of it. See, it's this interest. It's a psyop. They tell you, like the government tells you, hey, colleague, we believe in the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the separation of church and state. They tell you that. So you have this idea embedded in your mind. The government won't never do that. But behind the scenes, the CIA knows if we can get clergy members to say this, they won't believe it's the government because we've been telling them there's separation of church and state. So anything the clergy says or these preachers say, they're just going to believe it's the preacher's opinion. They'll never believe it was because the government fed this data to the clergy. So it's a perfect psyop.
Well, I guess that explains this.
Oh, look at this guy.
Hi, how are you? Hi. Hey. I'm with the ASPCA, and we're just going door to door in the neighborhood asking people if they'd be willing to commit to a monthly donation.
Okay, maybe.
Okay, if I told you a little bit more about where your money would go, would that make you feel better?
Yes, it probably would.
Okay, so I'm with the Animal Rights Division, or the TARDS, and we're in charge of all of the health care for the animals that we serve. So 100% of your money would go to their health care.
Okay.
Is that something you might feel comfortable with?
Yeah, I probably would.
Okay, if you could just put your name here, an email address, and then where it says regarding or RE, just put TARDS. Okay. And so our biggest healthcare dilemma this year for the TARDS is there's just too many pups. So 100% of your money would go to help with the abortions of unwanted puppies.
Wait, what?
Yeah, to abort the unwanted pups, because there's just so many young puppies. It's basically pups having pups, and they can't afford to raise their litter, and it's just a financial burden. So what we do is we help with aborting unwanted puppies.
Oh, well, no. I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay, is that your black sedan out front with the bumper stickers?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you understand that abortion's health care?
Well, yes, but it's not. That bumper sticker isn't about animals.
What's it about?
It's about people.
Okay, so are you saying that a human baby in a womb is not worth as much as a pup in the womb?
No.
It's worth the same, right? So if it's
yes.
not okay to abort puppies, then it shouldn't be okay to do that to humans. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, so abortion's not health care?
Well, I think no. I don't want to donate. I need to go. I need to go inside.
So would you agree then that abortion is murder?
Thanks for stopping by. You need to go,
ma'am. But before you leave, can we still count on your $19 monthly donation for the next 12 months? I guess abortion is murder.
Yeah. So there was a lot going on in there.
Yeah.
The guy he's a straight man who is going under this guise. You can even call it like a disguise.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes in, and the whole thing is just weird. Like there's a lot of contradictions being said on both parties, it seems like.
Well, that shows you the epitome. The most effective propaganda doesn't look like propaganda.
Yeah.
It looks like TikTok.
And that was real.
So the Ghost Army doesn't retire. It just went digital.
It retards.
And Operation Wandering Soul, it doesn't stop. It just moved over to bumper stickers and whatever else.
Yeah, it's American U.S. soil propaganda. Like, you can tell when you've bought a lie when you don't actually believe what you yourself are professing.
Right, and also ultimately it's because of cognitive dissonance and playing on the narrative of the wedge tactic, which we'll get more into, but you guys already know. You got to pick a side, and you're always fighting to be on the winning side. You don't really know why, but whatever the rhetoric was pushed out, I definitely don't want to be those people. Even though I may not agree everything over here, or I don't even understand what I'm agreeing to, I just don't want to be those people, whatever that is, because it's been so hyperbolically demonized. I'll just be over here, and that's a good example. She doesn't even really think about it. She doesn't really know. But I ain't going on that side. I don't even care if it logically makes sense. I'm not doing it. So whatever she was fed, it was strong enough to push those heartstrings to say, I ain't doing it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, maybe that's part of America's propaganda is that animals are worth more than humans.
Well, anything. Like at some point, that's just a construct. Why did they use these words? Wordplay is good. Shout out to Wittgenstein. But the word plays are good. Like we call them savages. We called them stupid, or
we called them engines.
Yeah, you call them anything. You call them, irresponsible, drug cartellers,
barely even human,
murderers, whatever. But that's the idea. You just can't simply say, they broke the law, and so now they're doing this. Nobody would care.
That's what they used to say. They used to say, savages, barely even human.
Shout out to Pocahontas.
And then they're like, let's kill them.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what they did.
But that's the epitome of propaganda. You need that rhetoric. Shout out to Machiavelli. You need that rhetoric to really manipulate the people, because rhetoric is more powerful than logic for the average person.
But it doesn't work on some people. Shout out to Cocoam and Mr. Smith, John Smith. It didn't work on them. And it almost cost John Smith his life.
Yeah, but we
all saw.
You can see the narratives that's being pushed even in that cartoon. Which shows you how low will it go. This is straight limbo. But
because in the end, like you find out what happens next, and John Smith, he doesn't even stay with the same woman. So he was propagandized too, and he went back to the motherland, England, and he got with a different woman, another white woman.
Yeah, of course.
And he left his first love. And I think there's a lot to say about that.